Welcome to the Product Quest podcast. Thank you for joining us on our journey to better understand innovation and product strategy. My name is Jan Vermouth, and joining me as always are my co-hosts Scott Burleson and Jonathan Edwards. Today, we welcome our very special guest, Indi Young. If you've heard or used the term mental models, that's very much likely because of her work and the book she wrote with the exact same title, Mental Models. Indeed, she pioneered it, and as well opportunity maps, mental model diagrams, and thinking styles. Indi is a writer, a researcher, and coach for inclusive product strategy. Beyond mental models, she's published Practical Empathy, so a book I very much recommend, and she's very close, I believe, to publishing her next book, Time to Listen. You can find all of that and more on her website, indiyoung.com. Well, Indi, thank you so much for joining us, being here.
So pleased to meet you all.
Was that kind of a fair introduction? Is there anything we should add so that people kind of find what you've been working on?
Oh, the only thing to add is like this crazy, how long does it really take to write a book?
I just got your email. I think it was yesterday or the day before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, oh my God. I've been promising this book for years. It's in print layout, but you know, it's still going through print layout.
Anyway, so look out for it. Time to Listen. I hope once we get this out, it will already be published. And then Time to Listen is the book. Well, I kind of just want to jump in. There's a lot of things that I think is really, really interesting and unique also in your approach in what you're writing and what you're working on. But a very important word, two words that you use that are repeated often and often in your work is what you call the problem space. Mm-hmm. And I think you have a very interesting and particular understanding of what that means and what that is. So could you kind of just a little bit elaborate on what is the problem space?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I'm going to elaborate is sort of take a step back, and that is the way that we are told to do product design in a lot of large organizations is to follow a process and to do it quickly. And in fact, I have heard people talking about it as if they're driving down the highway at, 90 kilometers an hour. Actually, I should convert that to more like 120 kilometers an hour in the fog. And the whole team is trying to figure out what's like 10 feet ahead of them. So you're not going to crash into something, or rather you're not going to like drive off the side of the road by accident, but behind you is coming the competition. Ahead of you is the other competition. You got to speed. And that's kind of the mindset. And so we've got these cycles and methodologies of like figuring out which idea we're going to make, how we're going to make that idea, and how we're going to roll it out and how we're going to test it and hypothesize it and, do all this kind of either evaluative research or generative research with it. And then the development and testing that and all of it, right? This speeds along, and it's speeding along without much guidance. So all of that, ideas, solutions, generative research, all of that is in the solution space. You're coming up with a way that you hope can help somebody address their purpose. Okay. There are some orgs who are not doing that, and I'll talk about those a little later, but generally you're trying to help someone address their purpose. And we're doing it based on a strategy of like what the leadership is saying. We're doing it based on the strategy of like what big data, correlations have been sort of telling us. We're doing it based on, wow, this new technology came out. So let's put chatbots on everything. And so the ideas that are driving us are kind of like a slap shot, spaghetti at the wall. They're doing that. We better do it too. It's not intentional. And this is how we end up accidentally driving off the side of the road in the fog because we didn't realize that we were, we're so focused on the competition that we're not supporting the person. And we're actually, in a lot of cases, harming the people. Because we're
harming people.
Yes, because we're trying to design for like an average user. There's a normative design, like everybody, what was it? The last thing Tesla came out with, like a boom box or something, and they're designing it for like the normative dude who drives a Tesla and wants to go to a kegger or something, right? You're like, okay, obviously that's not the majority. And so one of the things that I start my book off with is the idea that we come to this realization over and over that when we have gotten mature enough in an industry, we realize that we have been designing for this sort of mythical average person. Maybe if you're lucky, 5% of your audience is actually that person. And everybody else is kind of forced to use that same solution and make do, right? I happen to have an Aeron chair here with 6 cushions on it to try to make it fit me. So, we do make rounds. We're like, whatever. And the idea of the problem space is to put it as opposing the solution space. We're not interested in ideas or solutions in the problem space. And the reason I do that is so that then in the middle, we can actually have something called a strategy space. And we can fill the strategy space with knowledge that we create from the problem space about what's going through people's minds as they address their purpose. And what we do is we find that there are different approaches, there are different thinking styles. Once we see these patterns, we do the research in the problem space in a certain way so that we can synthesize and find patterns. We're not analyzing the data. So that's another big difference in what is happening in the problem space. Yeah. But the whole idea is in that strategy space now, it's not just leadership and big data and the tech that's coming out. It is very specifically, well, which thinking styles have we harmed really badly? Which thinking styles are we ignoring? I actually have 4 different levels of harm. One is just mild harm, which is what most organizations are after, which is like, let's make it less frustrating or less annoying for them or less confusing, right? That's mild harm. You go a little bit further, you're making someone feel unwelcome. You're making someone feel self-doubt, like, all those buttons that say, here's the ad for the printer refills or whatever. Hey, they're on sale. And you have to press the button that says, I'm going to miss out on this, right? Yeah. That's total gaslighting. And it's harmful. Not only the fact that it is interrupting someone's productivity, but it's making them have a tiny bit of subconscious self-doubt. You go a little farther and there's serious harm. Some of the software that's being used in the courts in various countries incarcerate people based on an average. Some of the software used, and this is in Kathy O'Neill's Weapons of Math Destruction book, some of the software used to calculate how much you pay in auto insurance is based on your postal code, the neighbors around you. Yeah. So
I see. So it came to mind. I think there's actual empirical evidence that women are much likely to take away very serious bodily damage from a car accident because the seats and the seat belts were designed for the average, which is a male body.
Right.
So, and then that's very interesting. So very different levels of harm.
Yeah.
Very different. All stems from the idea of the average users. Is that kind of fair to say? Or
yes, yeah.
It goes kind of back what you were saying in the very beginning. So that somehow in the solution space we're unintentional. I mean, it's so much based on speed and kind of delivering the product that it's not done intentionally.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm just trying to challenge you that a little bit. Isn't speed also necessary, or how do you?
Yeah. So what I'd like to. So we've got these 3 things. We've got the problem space, right? Problem space is where we're understanding people as they address their purpose. We don't care what tool they're using. And we care about them talking about a lot of tools, meaning memory, meaning talking to the neighbor, meaning remembering like how grandmother did it, or meaning habits and ways of thinking and guiding principles, right? So then we have the strategy space in the middle. And so it's being fed with this better understanding of different approaches. This is where the opportunity map and the gaps that we see appear. And this is where the thinking styles are. Now we get to put those in the beginning of the solution space. And the solution space now can ratchet down and look at one smaller section of what they're trying to solve with very specific players, with very specific different thinking styles, and maybe come up with a solution for one thinking style and a different one for a different thinking style. And sure, speed down that highway. But dang it, we don't have any fog anymore.
Okay, that's very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not against, let's say, you're not against speed.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the things that everybody asks me, well, how do you fit problem-based research into those processes? And you don't. You just don't. It's a different thing. And it has to happen slowly. What generally happens is that people will do it interleaved with their other speeding things, solution-based things. So some of this research can take 6 months, 8 months. I just worked with a client for a year developing a set of thinking styles. And now we're in the strategy space. We just had the meeting on Friday where we get to start thinking about which thing is a priority. So in the strategy space, you're looking at all of these gaps and you're going, well, which gap do we want to play in? I call them sandboxes. Which sandbox do we want to play in? And what other toys can we put in the sandbox where the other toys are like some quant correlations. The other toys are something the competition's doing. The other toys are maybe some tech or something. But the reason for the sandbox is the person and their approach to this subsection and the gap that we've got there.
Okay. I mean, we'll dive into a lot of that in more detail. I just kind of want to ask, maybe it's more of a tactical question even, but how do you make clients or corporates or organizations as a whole realize kind of the value of the problem space? I mean, how do you get them to notice and see, hey, we should probably pay a little bit more time and effort on actually understanding the problem of the people we serve? I mean,
there's two answers to that. In one case, people will start to open their minds to it when I start talking about how we track over time the reduction of harm, the improvement, the more inclusion of people. And there is a way to do that using the opportunity map and the thinking styles. So that's one way. People will recognize that there is a metric. There's a benchmark that we set and we're moving up. Okay. So that's one thing. The other thing is actually is a little bit less tactical. And that is that some person that has done work with this before or worked with me before goes into a new company and says, we're doing this. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So there's also some people who are like, they're high enough up in their organization that they can have access to the financial plan for the year. They can look and see where the money's going, and they can say, oh, it's going to customer service. I'm going to go talk to that VP and see if we can't do a project together in the problem space because it'll help both of us. And I don't have very much of that budget. And she does. So I'm going to go talk to her. But
it's right. I think it takes kind of a certain, sensibility, or you have to have realized that's not this speedy, unoriented solutioning is not a way to work, and it does more harm than it actually solves, even if there are great intentions behind it.
There's I guess maybe a third way too, is that people have been harmed themselves.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. And there's a lot of us out there who've been harmed. You do not want a recording of me trying to work with Microsoft Word.
Yes, that's
right.
100% right.
I'm sure that I'm not alone. But there are, there's somebody that they built it for.
Yeah.
So why are we not improving that? Why are we not trying to track this getting up?
Yeah.
Making it better for different approaches.
Yeah. So I just wanted to jump in and maybe ask if you could maybe give an example of thinking style and maybe dive in a bit more into what the opportunity maps are, if it's possible to explain it via audio.
Yeah, it's so I also have videos that we're going to get up on the website someday. And the new book talks a little bit about it as well. I do talk about it in the other two books. So a thinking style, the definition of a thinking style starts out this way. It's a demographics-free archetype. Okay. I'm going to force that demographics free on you at first, because it is in reaction to the way that a lot of people use personas or create personas out of thin air. That's not how you're supposed to create personas, but that's how it's done because they're doing it in the solution space and they're on a time budget. So they've got 1 hour.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we all sit together.
Yep.
Sit in a room and we make the
soccer moms who enjoy chocolate.
Exactly.
And weirdly enough, they're very abstract.
Have names and they have 3 children and they live in this city. Yeah.
Right. And so the personas have nothing to do with the purpose.
Right.
And worse, set after set of personas that I look at, I'm like, this is all the same thinking style, just with different demographics attached to it.
Right.
Yeah. You guys have not been able to get outside of your own thinking.
Yeah. So often we see personas that there is no difference. There is no difference. They're age difference, but what does it matter?
They're all graduates from university. They all are the same age. They all live in an urban setting. They're, they all work for, at a corporate 9-to-5 job, kind of, not that exists anymore, but now that we're all ending up.
For you, did I get that right? Kind of thinking style that is what differentiates kind of groups of people, or is that even in an individual level?
Let me go a little farther into the definition. So there are archetypes, there are mindsets, you might say. But the other part of it is that they are based on patterns from listening sessions. Okay. So they're based on patterns from listening sessions where we see certain core approach to the purpose, similarities between people. And this core approach is made up of specifically interior cognition. And interior cognition is made up of 3 things itself. It's like kind of this jawbreaker candy. You go in, and then
what's these Russian dolls like? Where
Exactly. So in the interior cognition, we have inner thinking, we have emotional reactions, and we have guiding principles. And there's some definitions for those that are very specific, which I can get into, but let's pop back up to the thinking style definition. The thinking styles are based on patterns that we see, and those are not people who are identical in all of their interior cognition, but similar in some core. So the thinking styles I'm going to use as an example are thinking styles of people with the purpose of getting to the airport to get onto the plane. Okay. I believe this could also work for people getting to the station to get on the train. It's a long distance trip. Getting to the bus station to get on a long distance bus trip, but it's a long distance trip kind of thing. And so what is it that you are bringing that guides your behavior with respect to that purpose? And there's like maybe 3 or 4, or maybe at the most 5 things that make up that core. So one of the thinking styles is the let's do this correctly thinking style. Okay. Like if we all do this correctly, then everything's going to go smoother. We're all going to get our, like what we purchased. The way that people talked about it was get my due. Getting through security. This is the mindset. Let's do this smoothly. If you would just, be prepared, then nobody would have to like stop the line and hand off their water bottle.
Oh, I think I'm one of those. I immediately connect.
So, Indi, am I correct on if you're a let's do it correctly thinking style? You sort of have these standards for yourself, and you also have those. You apply them to others, whether they've asked for it or not. Or am I looking too much into
in a way? Yeah. What you're not applying it to them, but you're wishing that if we all sort of paid attention in this way, then everything would be beautiful. Now, originally, the team I was working with wanted to call this group the Grumblers. Now, Jan, how would you feel to be called a grumbler?
That's totally wrong labeling.
Right?
Yeah.
But
because I'm an efficient guy. I know what's best for you.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly.
The internal perspective is of course not negative. I mean,
no. And so many of those personas out there have like the wrong name. A name that no one would call themselves, right?
Yeah.
So there's 4 of these that came up, and it's interesting because I use the same data in my courses, and people still come up with these same 4 patterns. So they may like put slightly different tweaks to the naming and stuff like that. But the second one is in the bubble. So I need, either because I'm nervous about this, or because like I do it so often and it's just it's a chore. So, or maybe it's a chore because I'm shepherding a rock band. And I'm the manager, right? This was some of the data. And what I'm going to do is make a bubble, a peaceful bubble. So inside this bubble, it's going to be peaceful. And I'm going to, sit with people who are experienced and also peaceful. I'm going to do that in the gate and on board. I'm going to bring things to entertain myself or keep myself peaceful. Sometimes though, if you're nervous, it's bringing things to distract yourself. Okay. And that bubble is also a shield to keep you from letting your own stress out and affecting other people. This is a big part of this thinking style, is to not let your own stress affect other people.
So if you're in the bubble, it sounds like there's a degree of preparation. You've thought through this ahead of time, and you've planned for the experience so that you can live in the bubble. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Now, what's interesting is that you could have planned and everything is in the bubble and you're in this peaceful situation, but flights get canceled, children get upset. It's like all crashing down. And then all of a sudden you're maybe let's do this correctly.
Okay? So a thinking style is not kind of your DNA or your
It
fate.
Is not
so
a horoscope.
But can you change? Can you be different?
Oh, yeah.
Thinking style? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Usually it doesn't shift as much as it does for planes for that purpose. Like if your purpose is to protect my family, it's going to shift slower over life events. Right. Okay. But it changes.
So just to see if I get this right. So would it be correct to say that the thinking style is basically the combination of the reasoning, the reactions, and the guiding principles? Or is that correct?
Yeah, it's a combination of there's like a set of like 4 or 5 of those that several people in your listening sessions had. And we ended up doing 100 listening sessions. That was a huge project. Normally, I do like 12 or 20. It depends. I have an equation for figuring out how many listening sessions I need to do. And then I double check to see if I'm getting patterns as I go and add more people if I need to, or subtract people if I have got patterns.
Actually, as you're mentioning patterns, this is something that I was wanting to ask you about what exactly are patterns, because I wasn't quite sure I completely got it when I was reading the book. So I think it's connected to this.
Yeah, it is connected to this, and the definition of patterns is one of the big differences between the way that I do the work and the way that typical qualitative data is treated. Okay, so one of the things with typical qualitative data is that people will go through and sort of tag things. This is a this is a that. Yeah. And then they'll go back and they'll organize the tags. Some of them, they do it more open than closed. So the tags are different, right? But they're going back and they're looking at the tags and they're coming up with insights. I don't get insights until the end when we do our gap analysis. Insights don't happen when you're doing data synthesis. Data synthesis is all about making sure the other people's voices come out and are heard and are not filtered through my own brain. Because when you do analysis on qualitative data, when in that two-step process, each researcher will come up with different insights, slightly different.
Okay.
And that is why qualitative data is distrusted by a lot of people, because it seems squishy, it seems subjective.
Yeah.
So I do synthesis. Synthesis is like me erasing myself from it all and simply summarizing the concepts that each person speaks about at that interior cognition. So I summarize inner thinking, I summarize emotional reactions, and I summarize guiding principles. And I do that for each person. And then I look for patterns based on focus of mental attention. And so the focus of mental attention might be, plan what I'm going to eat on this trip, right? And not everybody has that focus of mental attention, but some people do. It happens at different points in time. But you're going to have a bunch of inner thinking. You're going to have a bunch of emotional reactions. You're maybe going to have some guiding principles as well. Guiding principle: never spend more than $20 on an airport meal, right?
So that would be a guiding principle. For instance.
Guiding principles are not values. Guiding principles are personal rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is true that actually, I mean, as we were talking about this beforehand, we're all quite fans of Jobs to be Done, and I think this is maybe the others will correct me if I'm wrong, but something that's not necessarily, this may be lacking in Jobs to be Done. I don't know, or would there be a parallel? I mean, what's your
so
on this?
I have spent 9 months having like a monthly or biweekly meeting with people talking about Jobs to be Done to try to understand the differences and similarities. And I think if you take it all the way back to what Tony Olwick does, and when he takes his time to do it, is very similar. I think the thinking styles are different. Jobs to be Done still goes with roles, and roles are not thinking styles. But I think if you do it right, you can do it with thinking styles. I don't know how he synthesizes the data. And I think if you take, so I have people in my courses who use Jobs to be Done and they apply synthesis to it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's pretty much the same thing. It's just that I am more focused on making sure we don't let our assumptions get in there, making sure we get away from the average user, making sure that we include different styles of thinking, non-normative ways of thinking. And let's try to make more people feel welcome, because if we make more people feel welcome, they're going to have a better time addressing their purpose, a better way of doing it. Maybe it'll waste less of their time. Maybe more things will get made or created, and the human race will flourish.
Finally. But no, I think I really had the feeling, I mean, if you're kind of, let's say, a little bit versed in the language of Jobs to be Done, a lot of the things you were talking about, you kind of I almost had the feeling like you can translate it into one of or the other. I mean, if you talk about the way in which you talked about the problem space, like let's forget about the solution. Let's not look at the solutions that we want to develop, because if we're doing that, we're already biasing everything that we go. That's immediately the way I think, okay, that's jobs to be done, to me at least. And then when you're using that expression where you say a person, what is it exactly? So working towards her purpose,
addressing their purpose.
Their purpose.
Yeah.
So that you could almost translate it as the person is trying to get a job done. Or isn't that?
It's so addressing your purpose is a little bit broader than that, because it could be that you are postponing. You're putting it off. You don't want to do it. Okay. It could be that it's a purpose that's like protecting your family. And I know Tony Ulwick did one that was jobs to be done of that particular purpose. And so it could take a long time, and you don't address it continuously.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I think is another difference is that when I do listening sessions, I try to get the person in memory mode. We are not talking about them using a product. This is not evaluative. This is not generative research. This is problem-based research. We're asking them what went through your mind as you were addressing that purpose. Okay. And all those different times that you address the purpose that you remember. You won't remember all of them. And there's even situations, there's purposes that you can't, like it went all subconscious on you, and you can't get your interior cognition out. And so for those, like for example, cooking dinner, right? Cooking dinner as a creative chef was a scope, and scoping these purposes is a really important part of this. I have a whole chapter on it in the book. So
I want to get into that later on, but anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But for cooking dinner, like half the things you're doing, you're not thinking about. If you've done this a lot, right? And I was just talking to my niece, and they're all like, oh, I have to think about everything, because they're just starting out with their own first apartment cooking. So anyway,
then it's very then
it's very conscious. But in these cases, I go, and as they're cooking dinner, first I have a listening session with them by whatever medium we want. We can do it by text, we can do it by phone, we can do it by video, whatever, right? But then I go when they're cooking dinner, and we already have this really warm relationship. And in fact, with a listening session, you actually do an intro session first, where you start building rapport. And the intro session allows you to have a warm connect. So it's a slightly more human way of getting someone to talk about their interior cognition. And then you're in the room while they're cooking, and we're still doing another listening session, and they're talking. And I'm also observing a little bit of what they're doing. And I'm like, why the heck are you, slicing the, I can't remember the name. It's a root that's bright orange, like ginger. And she's no.
I don't know.
Turmeric.
Oh, okay.
Why are you slicing the turmeric like above the pot in the air with a knife?
Oh, okay.
And there was some interior cognition about that happened way in the past. And so memory mode is super, super important. What happened way in the past was when they first started incorporating turmeric in their meals, it stained and ruined one of their favorite cutting boards.
Nice. I love that because I never believed people who say that whatever is unconscious, or that we're just doing it unconsciously, is that we're doing it because we're stupid or we didn't think about it. I think it's dead wrong. Even if
something
we are
in the past,
if we are walking through a grocery store and we pick something without thinking, I never bought that there wasn't some thinking going on at some place at some point in time. That's just not. People are much smarter than most people believe.
Oh yeah. Thank you. People are smart. That's my motto. Everybody is smart. We have these incredible human brains. No matter what level and walk of life you come from, no matter how you're judged by the education system, right? You have this beautiful brain.
One of the most, one of the most almost exciting things I've heard you say. There's almost, I don't know if it's a dirty little secret, but it's something that practitioners know. Practitioners know how powerful qualitative work is. And even though we like the statisticians minded folks will, they're quick to point out the limitations. But when you actually build stuff, create stuff, how many times have we seen where you do the qualitative work and then the quantitative more or less supports you basically, when you finish the qual, you really sort of have what you need already, and then the quant often is something to sort of stamp it for people that I forget the wording, but who are just dismissive of it. And so I just am really excited to hear about just the powerful, or how you're all in with the qualitative. There's like no apology. Like, we're all in quantitative.
There's no apology. And if you think about it too, like the quantitative is so focused on the solution. We're looking at supporting a person through the aperture or the lens of our solution.
Sure.
Right. And so
especially today in this data mining stuff.
We end up in these little tight loops, and it doesn't help.
And looking at this synthesis, so it sounds like you are with with any time of qualitative, you try to forget about the solution, like you try to separate that, but you're going beyond that. You're not only not thinking about the solution, you're going to make sure and not draw conclusions yet, if I understand correctly.
Correct.
You're like, I am measuring this person. They get my full focus. I'm going to measure everything about them. And I'm not going to say, you know what, in the middle of that was similar to what this person, this other city thought, and this other city thought. And that's what, as a qualitative interviewer, I am guilty of. And if I understand you correctly.
Yeah. Okay. So there's like two things that I can talk about with regard to listening sessions.
Yeah.
One is what you just said. You pay rapt attention. Yeah. That is 90% of your cognition. You're not doing other cognition. You try actively to stop your other cognition and just follow what the person is saying. Okay. By the way, you don't get to bring up any topics. You only get to start a listening session with the germinal question, which says, what went through your mind as you were addressing that purpose?
That is actually quite a similarity into a jobs to be done interview.
Yeah.
Because you set the scope as you talked about cooking dinner. We're here to talking about Sean just cooking dinner. And that is your contribution to, you're just setting a framework. And within that, you sort of back away. And
you back away. The key is not to bring up any topics. You can go back to a topic, say earlier you brought up something when, there's like something and you're like, hang on. So let's follow that path, right? You can do that. You can switch, but generally you're following. You're not switching in the middle of their thought. And the idea, so 90% of your cognition is rapt attention. There's two things you're allowed to do. These are background processes. One of them is to notice whether we are hearing things at the exterior layers or hearing things at that interior cognition layer. Are we at exterior or are we at cognition? Interior cognition. Okay. Interior, exterior. The exterior consists of the description layer and the expression layer. And the expression layer, so description obviously is like explanations, processes, how it was supposed to work, scene setting, statements of fact, stuff like that. The typical stuff that you get in an interview. Expression layer is opinions and preferences, attitudes and behaviors towards a brand. Okay. That's also typically
so when they express.
Those are things that we're not interested in. They're going to come up. We aren't not going to hear them. We kind of have to hear them to get the scene, but we're not interested in them because we're interested in that interior cognition. Okay. The second background process is, are we in session mode or memory mode? So in session mode, that's where we're aware of each other and we are in this conversation together. Like early, that's the stuff I was telling you earlier. Here we are in conversation together. Okay. That'll come up.
Okay.
It's like a sea mammal, going down deep and then coming up for air. Memory mode is when the person is like caught in their memory and unfolding for you their interior cognition. So session mode and memory mode. So these are two background processes. Okay. The other thing is the techniques that you use to get somebody to interior cognition. What you're doing is, as you're paying rapt attention, you're noticing, oh wow, that there sounds like there could be some interior cognition beneath it. I'm going to stay quiet, but it's a pull tab. It's a pull tab. I'm going to keep it in my memory because probably the person's going to unpack it. But if they don't unpack it, I might jot it down. I'm not taking any notes. These things are being recorded. Either, or if we're doing it by text over the course of 2 or 4 weeks or something, that's fine too. It's being recorded that way. If a person needs to get up and draw, we will need to take a picture of that kind of a thing.
I love that this is, sorry to interject, but it seems like, but it's not, I don't want to kind of frame this in a negative way, but you're completely open as to where it goes. A listening session is kind of much more like a way in which to talk to people, but then the means we use for that, paint, text, whatever, I mean, there are 1,000 ways to do it.
Yeah.
You somehow don't care about that at all. Right. Because again, of the same way of talking to somebody, you can do it through whatever. Is that?
Yeah, that is being a little bit more inclusive than we have been in the past. That is recognizing that other people can have preferences in communication. That is recognizing that other people have not been included because we excluded the way that they are comfortable communicating.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I actually, So, I mean, you mentioned in the book, actually, you quote some spiritual leaders in your last book, Practical Empathy. And this, what we've just discussed, reminds me of this, because I think these listening sessions, they, in a sense, there's some connection with meditation or this kind of observing yourself. Also, there's a lot of those kinds of processes going on, and so that was really interesting reading the book.
Yeah, it's very there are parts of the book, a whole chapter on kind of like paying attention to yourself and letting it go, in also creating a safe space, so that we could have a whole other discussion about creating a safe space and connecting with people. There's
I'm sorry. I didn't want to cut you off. Sorry about that. I actually wanted to, you were talking about what we don't want to listen, what we're not looking for. So basically descriptions, you're talking, so explanations, opinions. And then you said we're looking for internal cognition.
Interior cognition. That's
interior. Yeah. Could you maybe say what that is then? I mean, how do we recognize that?
Inner thinking, emotional reactions, guiding principles, and they can be implied.
So this is what we were talking about before.
Yes, it's exactly. The same core 3 things.
Okay.
Yeah. And those 3 core things actually are the definition of cognitive empathy. Okay. That's why those 3 things.
Cognitive empathy with what would be other kinds of empathy then? Maybe now
you've opened the box.
I've opened the box.
Yeah. In the psychology world, there are many types of empathy. Each one has a different set of terminology that they use around it. Typically, when you see a book like Against Empathy by Paul Bloom, they're talking about emotional contagion. That's a type of empathy. When you hear people saying compassion is more noble than empathy, compassion is a type of empathy. Okay. When you hear Dr. Brené Brown talking about empathy, she's usually talking about empathic listening. That's an in the moment kind of support for someone, to tell them you are listening so that they can choose whether or not to unburden themselves with whatever was going on. Generally, that kind of empathy, empathic listening, is associated with emotional reactions are not interior cognition, but interior cognition is a huge part of it. Guiding principles are a huge part of it. It's also associated with negative, not positive. And you can totally, somebody might, you'll notice, this is an in the moment sort of thing. You'll notice like somebody pausing or having an expression or doing like an intake of breath or something. You're like, something's going on for you.
Okay.
It could be interior thinking. It could be that a guiding principle is at play.
It's like a hint or a symptom.
Yeah.
Something's developing over there.
So back to hints and symptoms, these pull tabs, those are hints that there could be interior cognition, that we could get down. So inner thinking, it sounds like a lot of different things. It could be somebody's kind of like actual inner voice. It could be the way that they're internalizing a decision. It could be the guiding principle they're applying to that decision, or the guiding principle that they're ignoring, despite the fact it's their guiding principle. It could be the emotional reaction that is influencing some thinking or causing another emotional reaction to show up. There was an example that I use in the book that this woman is going, it's the early pandemic and she's having her groceries delivered, right? That's statement of fact, right? Or explanation. Yeah. Something in the exterior layer. And you're like, there's kind of like could be a pull tag there. What's that decision? How did that decision happen? And then she keeps going. She's like, I used to get my groceries delivered and I loved it. And that's a preference. So that's an expression. They just bring it right into my kitchen. It's so, exciting. And that's an emotional reaction that every time they bring it to her kitchen, she feels that emotional reaction, generalized emotional reaction, not very specific. But, and then she says, I made myself quit when I retired because I told myself, hey, I have time to go to the store now. That's a pull tab. There's probably some interior cognition there. But the purpose that we were studying was not about decisions made during retirement and changes that you made after retire. We had a different purpose. So I didn't pursue that pull tab. I pursued the other pull tabs about this decision to go back to it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the decision to start going back to the store again. And, my husband, told me about it. And I was thinking I could do that. That's interior cognition.
I really like how you describe it. Like, it seems like you're very attentive all the time and like looking for his pull tabs. You're calling them, and then you kind of have to decide. I mean, which ones am I going to pursue?
Yeah, you kind of have to decide. Yeah,
hundreds or thousands. Even,
and
I don't know.
You're not going to go through. You're not going to get to like completely explore all of them. You're just following the person.
Yeah. And
when the person indicates that they're finished talking about their interior cognition as addressing this purpose, then you're done with the listening session. Yeah. Often these things take me 2 hours because people get really into it. So you do not stop a listening session.
Oh, really?
Outside. No, it's over when the person's finished.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it could finish early. And you don't try to force them to keep talking. But with these pull tabs, there's actually 8 techniques. There's 5 techniques for asking for interior cognition. And then there's 3 more techniques for asking about clarity of cognition. Yeah. And that's what I unfold in the book. What are these techniques? How do you do them? So there's, and how the hell are you like watching to see what layer you're at and all, and still paying rapt attention, which is like,
those 10% that you don't use is on methodology.
Exactly. It takes practice.
Yeah.
It is not something that you would want to do all the time. And in fact, I only do 1 a day when I'm doing research. This is not the typical thing where you schedule like 6 people in one day and you've got to get between them. And by the second one, you can't remember who said what already.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I mean, we do 4 a day at max, but 2 people and we switch. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you're really paying attention, I mean, it's draining. It really takes a lot of energy.
You need to pay rapt attention to them before the listening session.
Yeah.
You need to pay rapt attention to them after the listening session as well. And what I mean by that is that after that listening session, you're vibrating with their thoughts. You're holding their thoughts, right? Their interior cognition as they address this purpose, very specific to this purpose, their memories. You sit with them, right? Yeah, you might have to go to a meeting or something, but in the back of your mind, you can sort of like, I just want to write down these core things that I remember, and I'm going to write them as a summary. And these summaries take a very specific format so that we can find patterns. And Jonathan asked me about patterns. So that is a whole nother thing. It's not in the book.
Some 20 minutes ago, we started thinking about patterns or something.
I know, right?
Tabs we haven't pulled yet from.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of pull tabs in here, but
I don't go. Sorry.
Yeah, we're just not going to cover all the pull tabs. That was my point. There is like, I like actually thinking of it as a landscape. And it's somebody's like favorite hike or something, or favorite neighborhood walk, or favorite drive, or whatever it is, right? And they're going to take us to the places that are important to them, that they have done some thinking about. We're not going to cover everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, just as a kind of, as a side mention, I think there's something that is where you're much more precise, to be honest, than we are in we are, whatever that means, in jobs to be done, because I never really bought that there's this very common distinction of functional jobs, social jobs, and emotional jobs. But you're using the word emotional reaction. And honestly, I think that's much more precise. I don't really think that people truly have emotional jobs, but emotions are reactions. You react to something in a certain way, but it's not like I don't want to get it's just, I don't think humans work this way. Humans,
right.
Love is a reaction. I mean, yes, you can say, you can speak metaphorically, but I seek love, or I seek fun or happiness, but you react to a solution in the end.
Yeah,
exactly. You're much more precise there.
Exactly. And one of the other things that I have trouble with jobs to be done is that, like, what if we could replace that word job with purpose? Because that's the one artificial thing about it. Otherwise, I think it's so similar. Yeah.
I mean, there is. I wanted to get into sorry, I don't know if Jonathan, you had other questions, because he's, by the looks of it, you're thinking about, there's some internal cognition going on there, I think.
Yeah, see, you're doing some empathic listening there.
No, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask, there's a lot of things I want to ask. Okay, first of all, this exactly on this word purpose. I mean, I think it kind of is sometimes used interchangeably. At least Clayton Christensen, I think he also talks about purpose. I don't know, Scott, you know the work of Oleg much better, but I think Christensen, he more or less used it at least interchangeably in some some aspects. But I don't know. I mean, why did you settle on purpose? Isn't also purpose something, let's say, very lofty, or every brand has a purpose?
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, all that. Yeah. I know, right? I actually was calling it intent for a long time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Every single word has baggage. And so my approach is, I'm just going to use something that's somewhat clear if I can define it. And then I don't care what words you use. And I would love it if you mix this process up with jobs to be done, like a lot of the people that I've already spoken with have done. I am not precious. And
goal? Huh? How do you differentiate with a goal? For example, why didn't you choose goal?
It can be a goal. It could be a goal. Sometimes, though, you don't think of these things as a goal. Like cooking dinner is not a goal, right? And so I don't care. It is large. Yeah. And so what the heck word am I going to use to like indicate this largeness?
And Yeah, so I mean, the reason I was kind of twitching before is because I was trying to remember a quote around purpose. I know I've read it in the past week, but I don't remember where it is, so I couldn't get to it. But anyway, I did have a question around this notion of intent or purpose, as you call it now, which is, how do you go from so these three core things that you're looking for, the reasoning, the reactions, and the guiding principles, to go to understanding what the purpose or the intent is? Or have I understood this correctly?
Yeah, so we're choosing the purpose up front so that we can listen to a lot of people about that same purpose.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, if we listened to different people about different purposes, we would have no patterns.
Okay. So that was okay. So that's the scope basically that you give before. Okay,
yes.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah. It's very much the same as the job. It's just one of the other words. Yeah, sure. It could be a job. It could be a goal. It could be, this little smaller intent. It could be this like more backgroundy thing I'm procrastinating about. It could be lots of things. So I could give you some examples of purposes that I have done research about if you were interested.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we already did the getting to the airport and getting on board purpose, right? There was a purpose of changing my personal identity.
Oh, wow.
Fun. There was a purpose of so as an entrepreneur who's already started a business, maturing that business, keeping that business alive and afloat. Okay. There was one of, as a software developer, using any old SDK, like figuring out why it's not working the way I thought.
Okay. That's very specific then. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super specific. And purpose can be like large. Yeah. It can be super large, exploratory, and it can be very specific. Like one of them was deciding which mobile phone to replace my current mobile phone with. Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, one of the issues that I think comes up often in the Jobs to be Done community is, of course, okay, at what level of abstraction do you define a job? And I mean, do you have the same kind of issue with your approach? Or because I mean, some of these
it's like
pretty broad.
The same thing happens, but it's not an issue.
So that's interesting. But so
the same thing happens, but it's something that we get to discuss. So I have a whole course on framing your study, because framing your study takes a lot of thought. Yes. It takes a couple of months. Okay. Even to decide on which thing, because you'll come up with lots of things to look at. But there are, and in framing your study, I told you that there's these different levels, right? There's super broad, there's sort of like a medium one, and then there's very specific. And you may have already done some of this problem space research where it appeared that there were blank spaces, and you wanted to zero in on those and do another couple of studies, right? Or it appeared that people were talking about, like one of them was taking care of your clothes. And one thing that people talked about, I mean, it was from somebody who makes washing machines. So obviously they had this idea in mind of a solution, right? But taking care of your clothes actually included figuring out when to get rid of clothing.
Okay.
Right. And people talked about all these different approaches that they used. Right. Yeah. It talked about a whole bunch of other things, especially like organizing clothing.
Yeah.
Right. And so by that process, we could say, oh, we're not interested in helping people decide to get rid of clothing, or maybe that's an opportunity, right? So one of them was a study about how employers, so in the US, and I'm sure in a lot of countries, there is a law about making sure you hire a percentage of your employees who have disabilities. And there's a an office that tries to help employers understand this law and adhere to it. And that office did a problems-based research around what goes through your mind as you are hiring and supporting people with disabilities, as you hired them in the past, right?
Yeah.
I don't care about future. I only care about past. And one of the things that became evident, so these great big neighborhoods showed up in the opportunity map. The opportunity map is a mental model diagram on top and your org's capabilities below. And the gaps are the way that they don't support certain towers in that city skyline or certain whole neighborhoods or certain thinking styles. And that's what happened. They realized there were two thinking styles out of that research. They were only supporting one thinking style, and they were mostly only supporting the idea of disability from being a veteran.
Oh, okay.
It was interesting. Yeah. So that immediately gave us some sandboxes, right? Which sandbox do we want to do? I don't get involved in that so much. They're like, bye, thank you for your work. And then they have all these sandboxes to decide between.
Yeah.
That was actually one of my questions. After when you've delivered your insights at the end, to what degree do you stay with them for actually developing solutions?
I normally stay with them to define sandboxes at least, and to talk about like, well, what other data do you have already that we could put into this sandbox that would influence our thinking there?
When they're ready to develop ideas, that's when you're transitioning out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I generally am. Yeah. I early in my career, I did hang out and actually develop ideas, but I kind of got specialized.
I think it's important. I think sometimes teams, well, if you can, you try to stay in there. What we try to do is what we call customer advocacy, because very, very quickly also the people, they lose the seat at the table again.
Right.
And then there's the product team so that's always a little bit of a danger.
Right. Yeah. That is definitely a little bit of a thing. The thing that I face is people who have managed to get budget have only gotten budget, right? Yeah. So I have heard stories of other people doing this where they are brought in the middle of some sort of a big solution, and they go back and they use whatever existing data to create an opportunity map to help guide the solution. Like the people trying to make the solution have gotten like all confused and going off in different directions. Never happens, right? That's
never. We never ever engineered anything.
Yeah. This was an example at a bank. And so this team came in, did an opportunity map, found where to focus, found the sandboxes, and helped decide where to focus. And based on the first thing that they were going to work on, the software architects came in, the editorial staff, the content developers, everybody was coming in looking at the same set of toys in the sandbox.
Yeah.
And it became...
I love that metaphor, by the way.
You took it out of my mouth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I do, because
you look at the sandbox and the toys in there. I mean, that's
right.
You're talking about
let's make our job fun.
But you're talking about the words intent and purpose. It's like, I could tell it's like, you just wish there was a different word. It's like, it's not exactly, you're close. It's like as close as we can get with the language we have. But sandbox, that's a great word, because you understand you're also not finished. Like is a place to play. It's also kind of fun, but it's like now this work is beginning.
Yes, exactly. I think the idea of moving between strategy space and problem space, strategy space and solution space, that's an important thing to be aware of.
Yeah.
So the team I was just working with, we were making thinking styles of internal employees. So the purpose there was what went through your mind as you were addressing a big challenge as an employee. A big challenge some of the time was working from home. A big challenge some of the time was not getting the promotion that I thought I was going to get, et cetera. So we came up with thinking styles, and me and my team were lightly guiding them as they were doing the research. So I do that kind of work too, like more of a an external check-in guide. And I sort of lead the thinking style working sessions and stuff. And they had actually attached to the bottom of the thinking style a solution. They're like, okay, here's a solution for managers of this thinking style and how you should maybe support me. Here's like 5 things for this thinking style, 3 things for that thinking style, 2 different things for that thinking style. And I'm like, okay, hold on. We have to go through the strategy space first. We have to see those sandboxes first. And then we can decide which sandbox to play in and which solution to pay attention to. Turns out at the end, they're like, oh yeah, no, that's not the sandbox we want to play in. The sandbox we want to play in is the communications group and the communications on the internal website. And that's going to be our first sandbox. And we're going to make different communications for the different thinking styles.
It's one of the things I just love about this approach. We often hear about problem and solution space, but the strategy space, this is a very important thing in between. It's just, I mean, that's just like I've got a big star on my page here. What does it look like to create a strategy space? I mean, are these facilitated sessions? I assume there's some education, but this is what we learned. But what does that process of developing a strategy space look like?
You know, half of it is a mindset shift, because when we're working in our orgs, we do the things in the strategy space, but we don't do them consciously and intentionally.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm trying to do a mindset shift of making it intentional. And so, yes, it is a pause. It is a point at which we have some knowledge from one place, some knowledge from another place, some knowledge from another place. We have a lot of knowledge. I put it into an opportunity map. I layer the heck out of that opportunity map with other knowledge that we've got. Okay. So that that opportunity map is gonna last for 5 decades.
Yeah.
Okay. You know this from Jobs to Be Done. You said without like
once
having the question mark. Yeah, exactly. And so you're going to layer stuff for like this year or this quarter and then take it away and layer other stuff, right? You're going to be adding capabilities and then measuring how well our capabilities are helping support a person address their purpose in a certain thinking style. So like that one for the employees of people with disabilities, and the thinking style was positive, proactive, like, oh, you know, I see that you're having this issue or you know, that kind of a thing. And the other thinking style was more reactive. Like somebody comes to me, I need a screen magnifier. Oh yeah, okay, I'll get that for you. They were only supporting the proactive. And so what they needed to do was start putting in support for the reactive as well and measure, like, okay, then you can go into evaluative research and measure how well it supports them and like put a little tick on your diagram. Yeah, we moved it up. And then the next time we're going to move it up a little bit farther. Or maybe we're going to switch to a different sandbox and move that one up.
Okay.
That's
really, I also just like, just from the spatial arrangement that you kind of say problem first, then strategy in between, because I mean, I'm so used to talking about strategy, something up there. So if we stay in a space, something overarching up there, or even detached from all of that, it just kind of drives whatever we're doing.
Yeah,
but I like that
back there or something.
That's kind of the link, right? So or something exactly something at the very, very beginning. We've defined it sometime, but we all forgotten what it is, and now we're kind of moving on. So I really like that there is the strategy is kind of the link between the two spaces.
And it already gets filled with knowledge.
Yeah.
But a lot of the knowledge that goes into it is reactive knowledge. It's solution-oriented quant, or it's reactions to new technology. It's reactions to what the competition did. A lot, there is knowledge in there. So there's already the process of putting knowledge into your strategy, but we need some other knowledge in there too, so we can be more intentional about being more inclusive.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love this discussion because it kind of, I wanted to play a little bit the devil's advocate, because you could say, I mean, we talked about this going about it very freely and open, and if I'm being very mean, we have no method, which is completely wrong, and that's not what you're doing, right? But and if you're more of a, I don't know, maybe business-minded kind of guy, like how is this purposeful? What does it get me out? What can I really then take? But because at the end, I need to sell a solution. I mean, that's kind of
researchers talking
right?
shop, you know.
I know, right?
It's like, well,
I mean, we all exactly. So I'm trying to bring you that perspective.
Well, it's like the research, you know. So the research will be done on July 30th. All right, so we'll have an idea generation session on August 1. And it's like, no, whoa. And we all have to push back against that, and I think we feel validated to say. I don't have a good story to tell about why, and so is that a case you have to make?
Yeah, so it's having that idea that we've got a more intentional strategy space that helps make that argument, because that strategy space is still going to feed the solution space, and the solution space is still going to spin really fast.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not taking that away, but we're feeding it much more concrete ideas. What comes out of the other end of that solution space is that you are supporting more people, and that leaves a mark on you. That's why you have to pay rapt attention to this person before the session and after the session.
Yeah.
What does that mean, to pay rapt attention before the session?
Yeah, pay rapt attention before the session. So I mentioned that we do an intro session. There is a different way of recruiting that I use where you can't just ask a market research firm to give you a bunch of candidates. Okay, because those candidates may or may not have done a lot of interior cognition about the purpose. So first of all, you might get, you treat it as an invitation that you put out there for people to put their name in the hat. Okay, we don't use market research recruiters. And so it is I'm working with somebody right now in Australia in the agriculture field. And she wants to invite people who are farmers to put their name in the hat. And she has to do it according to a protocol, and they sent out emails, and we were both just shaking our heads. Like, emails are not going to do it. That's like marketing crap, right?
Yeah.
No one's going to pay attention to it. You're going to have to get on the phone with your network and ask them to get on the phone with their network, to get on the phone with, farmers that they know, to do a warm invitation.
So recruiting's quite.
It's different. It's very different. Yeah. Yeah. And so that's totally that's part of paying rapt attention to them. You're thinking of them from their point of view. If you were recruiting for somebody who, I don't know, for a purpose that included, I don't know, visiting a particular spot, you could put yourself in that spot, or you could put little, those papers with little tags that you pull off in that spot or something. It's your first interaction with somebody, and it's got to be an invitation, not a poke or a prod or a we're smarter than you, that kind of a thing, right? So that's part of it. Another part of it is when you get these names in the hat, they may not all have done enough interior cognition. So what you need to do is have a little introduction session with each person and sort of judge for yourself whether they've done enough interior cognition about it. It could be that they got all excited about that opportunity to speak to you, and they're just at the beginning of it. They haven't done a lot of interior cognition about it yet.
How is that different than if they've had a lot of experience or not a lot of? So let's just do with the cooking example. I mean, do you want to do that? Is it if they've had a lot of? It seems like they would be correlated at least.
That's actually a great example. I was doing an introduction session with somebody that I thought was a great candidate. They were a nutritionist who was a nutritionist coach and taught people how to cook differently. Like, you are going to have a lot to tell me.
Yeah.
We did an intro session, and this was actually slightly different. They couldn't get to their interior cognition. I'll ask in the intro section. Yeah, I'll ask in the intersection, kind of like, I know that you've got all this experience. Tell me about one of them. And I will ask one of those 5 techniques for getting to interior cognition. And I so wanted her on the research that I stayed on that intro session for 40 minutes or something, trying to get her to talk. What went through your mind? Can you tell me more about that? Could you pinpoint it to one time? So with that particular client, what was going through your mind, or how did you react? Or, could not tell me about it. And so this is actually a little bit of a drawback, because she has a way of thinking. She has an approach that we couldn't in that intercession get to. But if I had tried harder, if I had gone, and maybe drawing would have been better for her. If I had tried harder and done drawing with her, or if I had tried harder and done texting with her over 2 weeks, then we might have gotten there. So I did not try hard enough in that intercession. I am learning every time I do this, how to change this approach.
I love this kind of, you're almost trying to, how can you mimic, is it worded, or kind of just get so close to them that, and it's maybe about this creating a safe space, or really how can you make them open up? How can you,
you can't make somebody open up.
Yeah, that's okay.
But you can invite. Yeah, you can invite them. You show that you accept everything that they say, that you're not judging. You show that you are supporting their way of thinking. You are also sensing when they hesitate.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And giving them space. There's a lot of silence in these things. Sometimes it's silence because they need to try to think of the thing that they thought.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's silence because they're like, do I want to go here?
Yeah.
And I will give them some space, some silence. If it continues, I may say, if we don't want to talk about that, that's fine. I'm very aware of what's going on. Or trying to be very aware. I am not aware of it because I don't have telepathy.
I think that's so important. I mean, I so remember the first interviews that I was trying to do, and I was scared to hell of silence because I'm not getting anything out of them, and then I need to poke and squeeze and however way I can find to make them talk. And then it takes a lot of experience and kind of calm to just to accept that silence is fine. It's great.
Yeah.
And take your time, and it's exactly then when you shut up and don't ask the second question that you had in mind, where beauty comes out. I mean, it's this, it takes a lot of. I mean, I have to restrain myself. I love to talk too much, so I'm always like. But you have to learn to restrain yourself a lot.
Right.
I mean,
so I sometimes will go through and do an analysis of a listener's style if they want to be coached.
Okay.
Yeah. And there are some little verbal tics that we have sometimes. Like one person was always saying, so, okay. And it's like, okay, whatever. That's your verbal tic. You bring your personality to this. That's okay. So it could be that it's just a verbal tic. But you're right. If you're afraid of the silence, that's one thing. Just start to explore. Try practicing it outside.
So, okay. No, just joking.
No, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to, I'm not going to intervene anymore. So I just wanted to say one thing, which is I'm always looking, I'm a fan of Jobs to Be Done, as I think we probably all are quite interested in it, at least. And I'm always looking for approaches or ways of seeing the world that will challenge my this Jobs to Be Done view, because as much as I like it, I do feel there's always kind of maybe something missing in the picture, and I'm often, I have to say, a bit disappointed that people are not able to really challenge this view, this lens, as people like to say in Jobs to Be Done. And I have to say, I would really recommend for anyone who is of this mindset of jobs to be done mindset. Not everyone gets taken in, but for those who do, I'd really recommend to read your material, because I have to say it's one of the really few occasions I've read something that really kind of makes me challenge some of my preconceptions. And also what I love about your work is the fact that it all holds together so well. So you've got, obviously, I mean, I know a bit about the mental models and the practical empathy. And I love how it all connects, basically. I mean, it's a real framework that you're developing. It's coherent framework. And I have to say, I really like that.
Awesome.
And
yeah.
So thanks for all your work.
Yeah.
And
one of the things that I see with jobs to be done is that it seems like it birthed a whole lot of agencies that go around saying, oh, I know how to do jobs to be done. I'll do it for you. And we'll do it right. And they'll do it fast. And they won't spend the time. So there's I think they're doing it out of competition with the other agencies. And I think one of the things that it feels like you bring to this is like, hey, we're all after the same thing. We're all interested in trying to get somewhere new. And it's fine to take pieces of different methods and put them together. It's fine to slow down and try to get more of a human understanding. And so I think this is like a deep breath. Yes. And right. Let's give ourselves some space. Let's not look at this like a road that we're careening down with competition. Let's think of it as a landscape that we're all living in together, and we can help each other out. There was actually one woman who did, her manager, they were a jobs to be done organization, or using jobs to be done. They weren't the agencies, and the boss wanted quantification of a market. Like she had found through the opportunity map a new opportunity, a new kind of market. So like, quantify it the way that we do it in jobs to be done. Okay, no problem. I will quantify it using these thinking styles. In the survey that jobs to be done uses, I will describe these thinking styles, and people will have agency to choose the approach that they use. And then I will be able to hear more from them. I will be able to have different questions assigned to different thinking styles. And try to quantify it that way, but to try to sort of, yes, and.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I believe I heard you say a while ago that, during the strategy sessions, you also encourage them to bring in, so you bring in your research insights, and what are the other insights you have? So it's a lot of pressure to put on any one study to give you all the, to answer every question. Yeah. And I wrote down a quote from, I don't know if it's something that you wrote or that I watched a few of your YouTube videos, but I love this. Cool. And you said, build an enduring relationship with the problem. I mean, I feel like that should be on my wall. What's in there? Because I really love about, I don't even know if it's about, well, it is about your method, but it's just about your approach. Is there's a patience. It's a patience with the actual interview. There's a patience with how the time it takes to do the process as it should be done. There's a patience you need for this developing this strategy space. And I think I already mentioned it, but I'm gonna say it again because I think it bears repeating. Just with the actual interview with the customer, you said it doesn't end until they say it ends. I've never done that before. I've always been like, okay, my brain just like, I'm cross-eyed. But it doesn't, they say, so there's a real patience. And so this phrase, build an enduring relationship with the problem, I feel like there's a patience enduring, right? And then what you have something, to your point, you have something that it is enduring. Like when you really understand the challenge somebody has, cooking a meal. How long have we been preparing meals? A long time. Doing it. So to say it'll be stable over 50 years is a fairly conservative statement, but I guess I'm just making a statement. That's a good question. But I just love this statement. Build an enduring relationship. Problem.
Yeah. And it's all based on like this concept that people are smart.
also goes back to this emphasis on listening. So a lot of times I think it's we emphasize communicating, we need to talk more, blah blah blah, but maybe we should also learn to shut up and listen. Like why not try that one?
I know, right? The opposite is happening on podcasts, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe we need to talk a little bit more so that people start listening. But anyway.
Yay. So one of the things is that this new book is an evolution from the old books. And it is a lot more, because I'm always learning, and there's going to be another book in the future. And one of the things in that book is that word listen. And that word listen, when you take it at its like solid definition, it excludes a lot of people. So I try to take it in a colloquial definition. Language is going to shift. Eventually, we may have a different word than purpose that's much better, or intent, or job, right? We're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
So this new book is, what do you have a title for it already? Or
I'm going to say April, but every month I always say the next month, and it still isn't out. So I'm going to say April. The thing I do know. Patience. Yes, we must have patience. The thing I do know is that on April 7th, I start the live training for listening deeply. And it's a whole new version of the course. It's a 5-week course where we meet once a week. The first meeting's just a half an hour. The other 4 meetings are 2 hours. And there's a bunch of videos to watch in between, and a bunch of practices and reflections. And then in the sessions themselves, we do some of the work, we practice it together, and we kind of do discussions and learn together.
Where should they go to if they want to know more, if they want to subscribe, if they want to have a newsletter? Where do they find you? Where can they?
You would find me on indiyoung.com, but also Indi Young on LinkedIn and Indi Young on Twitter.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like, we could go on for, it ends when it ends, right? So that maybe
exactly.
No, that's
see that.
The interview. Not with this.
I'm learning.
And you felt the way that we got distracted with each other. We just went into it, right? Yeah, that's what happens.
Hey, anyway, Indi, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. It's such an interesting, fresh approach. Perfect.
Yeah, that's what I also, the new generation coming in and people shifting careers into this. It's like, you have agency.
Yeah.
You may not believe it right now, but you do.
Thank you so much for doing
You're
this.
welcome. Yeah. Spread, yes, and take bits and pieces and mash up your own thing.
That concludes today's Product Quest podcast. As always, please send any comments or ideas for future shows to us, productquestpodcast@gmail.com, and see you next time. Okay,
now it's chocolate time.
Have this kind of exactly.
Wow, well done.